Hello, my friends. Hello, it's Matthew Street. Welcome to my channel. As always, I truly appreciate you all being here. And folks, I have a very special show today. Now, I've made a lot of videos about many musical artists from many genres over my time here on YouTube, but I've realized lately that I have neglected one of the greatest artists and songwriters of all time, and that's Mr. Bob Dylan. I can't think of one dedicated video I've made to Bob, and I feel ashamed about that. I mean, let's face it, Bob, he's an icon. He's a legend, just as Elvis or the Beatles are icons and legends. He is definitely a legend of all time in the music world. And I've talked many times about Elvis and the Beatles, and yet never Bob. And I've asked myself recently, why? Why not? Why haven't you done it? And I thought about it, and I truly believe it's due to my lack of confidence and mixed with a little bit of fear, speaking about Bob. I mean, with other artists like Elvis and the Beatles and others, power pop artists, you know, I love power pop. I feel like I have the knowledge, or I can at least put together a coherent thought when it comes to speak about these other artists. But when it comes to Bob, I've been a little nervous about having good, positive, and, you know, something to add to the Bob Dylan discussion. And I really love his music, and I really want to talk about him, and I want to do so going forward on my channel because I've really grown as a fan throughout the years. And I don't want to sound like a fool or be ignorant, obviously, when I speak about him. And there's, like I said, there's so many well-versed Dylan fans out there who can handle that much better than I could. But I'm changing that today, folks. I'm changing it because to kick off my commitment to speak more about Bob and his music as a not really a newbie, but as a fan who's finally feeling like he really wants to step out into the limelight and speak about Bob, I've got two guests with me here today to help me understand more the magic of Bob Dylan and to truly understand what a poet, what a great songwriter and legend he truly is. Now, both of these men I have with me today, they're well educated. They enjoy a wide range of musical artists. They love literature and history. I know both of them do. But more importantly, they're both mega Bob Dylan fans. They own everything, every album, I can say, by Bob Dylan. And they are members of two different generations of Bob Dylan fans. So my first guest today, he's well known. If you're in the YouTube community, he is very well known. And he's also extremely well known in the Bob Dylan community. He's the host of the Calico Silver channel. He's a talented multi-instrumentalist. I mean, this guy can play guitar and piano like you can't believe. And I wouldn't be surprised if he tells me about more instruments that he's able to pick up and play. He's that talented a musician in my book. But what I also love about him is that he's a very good-natured, fun guy. I enjoy his channel so much. He's got a gentle spirit about him. He's got a great personality. So please, from the Calico Silver channel, welcome Jeff. Jeff, welcome to the Matthew Street channel.
Hey there, everybody. Thank you very much, Matt, for having me on here. I'm honored.
No, I'm so happy to have you here, Jeff, and especially as a noted Dylan fan. My second guest today, he does not have a YouTube channel, but he's a regular viewer and he's a total music enthusiast, especially when it comes to Bob Dylan. And he's also, like Jeff, a gentle soul. And in addition to that, he's a doctor who utilizes his talents, his caring nature, and his faith, which is very important to me as well, in an effort to help his patients. And I'm so honored to have him here as well, speaking about Bob. So please welcome a good friend of my family. His family's very close to mine, Dave. Dave, welcome to my channel.
Matt, thanks so much for having me on, and I'm really excited to talk to you and Jeff about Bob.
Yeah, no, I really, this is a great step off point or a launching point for me to speak more about Bob and feature Bob more on my channel. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to be asking you a series of Bob Dylan related questions, and you're free to offer your thoughts on it. Whatever comes to your mind is fine. And the first thing I want to ask the two of you is, what was your, if you can think back far enough, especially guys like mine and Jeff's age, me and Jeff are the same age.
Yep.
But what was your first introduction to Bob and his music, if you can remember so? And what about it grabbed you initially?
You want me to go first?
Sure, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Back in the late 60s, when I was a young boy, My dad had a couple of albums. He had 3 or 4 Bob Dylan albums, but in particular, he had this one here, Nashville Skyline, and I remember he bought this one as well. I just loved Nashville Skyline. And my dad was a salesman. He traveled a lot, and he would take me on trips with him sometimes, and we would play those albums in the car. And so I have a bond with my dad through Bob Dylan. And so that was my introduction. I thought he was fantastic, but I thought he sounded like that. I thought he sounded like the Nashville Skyline Bob Dylan.
Hmm.
It wasn't until a little later that I heard this album here. This is the one that really, really blew me away when this came out.
Right.
And so, yeah, but ever since then, I've been a fan, ever since really 1969 or 70, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Cool. And Dave?
Yeah, I think my introduction to Bob was something of a greatest hits collection. It was the Essential Bob Dylan on CD, and I probably got that CD when I was 12 or 13 years old. I can't remember if my dad bought it for me or if I got it as a gift from an uncle who knew I liked music. But I didn't know much about Bob Dylan except that he was a famous musician, and that was I stuck to the first disc. I remember because I loved a few songs on the first disc, and being a young kid, I didn't really explore that much beyond it. But I remember Like a Rolling Stone made a big impression on me, and It Ain't Me, Babe, for some reason really got to me. So some of the big, like really well-known songs, but that was my introduction. And I liked Bob, but later on I became a bigger fan as I got into college and I guess late high school, college. But yeah, we could talk about that more.
Yeah, that's my next question for the two of you. Like when that happened, when you both experienced that initial, musical experience with Bob, did you become a mega fan immediately, or did it take time for that fandom to grow on you both?
No, I was into a little more rock, sunshine pop. I really like sunshine pop, and but I was impressed with Bob Dylan, not only with those albums I showed you, but I was impressed that nearly every album that my parents had I was a nerd, a music nerd back then, like you are, Matt. And on the back of the album, I would notice who wrote the songs, things like that. And I noticed that this Dylan name kept popping up over and over and over. So I think I had more of a respect and interest in him than an enthusiasm. That came a little later with Blood on the Tracks and other albums. But at first, yeah, I was more into stuff that a 9-10-year-old kid would like.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Yeah, and for me, like I said, I guess I was into 60s rock and roll, introduced by my father. Really loved the Beatles, and I was also into 90s alternative at that time because it was like 1996, 97, somewhere around there. So like bands like Green Day and Nirvana, even though Nirvana was done at that point, were big. So it took a little while for me to get into more folk, acoustic kind of sounds, which kind of brought me closer to appreciating Dylan. And I had some high school friends that were big fans that really turned me on to him. So,
Right.
Did those 90s bands ever exhibit or indicate that they were influenced by Bob Dylan at all? Do you recall?
gosh, not that I remember. Bob really came out of the blue for me, I think, because interestingly enough, I guess when I was around 12, 13, 14, I got into this Canadian rock band called the Bare Naked Ladies. I'm sure some people remember them. And that was the first sort of music that wasn't like really heavy electric guitar driven that I enjoyed. And so they played some acoustic songs, and my father also introduced me to some John Denver at that point. So my ear was becoming more inclined, I think, to more like acoustic, laid back folk kind of sounds. But yeah, a lot of those 90s bands, I wasn't into some of the 90s bands that would have been influenced by Bob Dylan. It was more of like the alternative, the punk influence.
I don't remember if Matt said this, but do you play an instrument? Do you play guitar, David?
Myself?
Yeah, I play guitar.
Dave does. Yeah.
Yeah. So you probably enjoy playing some of Dylan's songs, I'll bet.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of the Yeah, a lot of the early stuff is fun to play because you don't have to think too hard about it, but
Right.
it's a good time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, someone like you, Jeff, I won't embarrass you and say you're a virtuoso, but I've seen videos of you playing guitar and you are quite talented. Do you still find it pleasurable to pick up that guitar or when you did play a lot, play Bob Dylan songs? Were they still exciting for you to play?
No, I'm a classical guitarist, and
Right.
so there are some Dylan songs that are musically sophisticated enough that I like to explore instrumental versions of. But mostly, I always saw Bob Dylan as a poetic performance artist,
Mhm.
and the music was never as big for me as his performance style and the way he expressed his lyrics, that kind of thing. So I didn't play a lot of Bob Dylan on guitar because I played mostly
Right.
classical and that kind of thing. But there are certainly pieces that he's written that I think are very musically interesting.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, sure, yeah.
So Noah, it kind of led into something I wanted to ask you guys. Is that so? You kind of answered it just now, Jeff. So is that what has sustained you as a fan, Jeff, with Bob? The fact that not so much the musical aspect of it, but what you just answered. That's what has kept you coming back to Bob
Oh
over and
yeah,
over again.
the poetry. Oh, no doubt about it. I caught on to that right now. Nashville Skyline. There's not a whole lot of really in-depth poetry there, but it's still beautiful. The lyrics are fantastic, and
Hmm.
I think it was with when I started going back to earlier music that he did in the mid
Right.
'60s, early '60s, and also later into '70s. I mean, it just blew me away, the poetic nature of his lyrics, and not only that though, but just the way he expressed them, his phrasing. A lot of people think he can't sing very well, and that may be true. I don't know, but there's singing and then there's singing, and he does that singing. If you know what I'm
Hmm.
saying.
Yep.
He sings the lyrics. I think that's one weird thing about me is that I've never enjoyed too many of his covers. When other people cover his music, I think because I'm so spoiled with him, the way he performs the lyrics, that I have trouble sometimes with some of the more flowery, soft versions, like the Birds. I know a lot of
Hmm.
people like the Birds, but yeah, I prefer him because he knows those lyrics. He's singing them,
Right.
and
Exactly.
um,
Dave, same type of question then. What keeps you coming back to Bob? What has sustained you as a fan with him?
Yeah, I think it's a similar thing. I think it's him as a performer. It's definitely his songwriting in the sense of the lyrics, his whole attitude when he sings, and how he
mhm,
can sort of change his attitude depending on the song or the album, and even change his voice, as Jeff alluded to, like a Nashville
mhm,
Skyline versus other albums. Um, and what really got me into Bob and what still gets me into Bob is like I'm just interested in him as a person too.
mhm,
I think what really turned me on to him was the I think it was 2006 documentary No Direction Home.
mhm.
Martin Scorsese did that documentary, and I remember watching that on PBS when it aired for the first time, and I just kind of stumbled onto it flipping through channels, and I caught it like halfway through the first night. So it was like in the middle of the show, and I was by the end of it, I was like, I got to watch tomorrow. Like I got to cancel whatever I'm doing tomorrow night to finish this up.
Hmm.
Um, but I was just so impressed by him as a person and like sort of how he carried himself and how he was acting like Woody Guthrie in the beginning, and I still like to see his evolution. Like, what's he going to do next? So that kind of
Yeah,
keeps me going back to Bob.
Yeah.
yeah.
Good.
I think he must have a photographic memory. He just absorbs everything he reads, everything he sees, and just puts it all together and expresses it in his own unique way.
Right.
Because he'll get on stage and he'll sing "Sad Eyed Lady" or something that will go on forever. 11, 12 verses. You know, and he'll do that all night.
Right.
And,
Right.
and I don't know. He's just quite an amazing individual. Like David said, he's just a very interesting person.
Yeah.
And and the fact that he performs songs differently each night, I love. Some people hate, but I love that. And yeah,
Yeah.
you're,
You, maybe you could talk a little bit about emotionally with Bob. How does his music affect each of you emotionally? Like when you put on a favorite Bob Dylan album or when you're hearing some Bob, emotionally, what are you feeling? or is it does it run the gamut?
Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it runs the gamut, and I think it depends on, what mood I'm in, which album I'm going to listen to or want to listen to. I heard an interesting sort of take on John Wesley Harding. Someone on YouTube said that it's like when you put this album, so this is John Wesley Harding's the album after Blonde on Blonde. You put this album on, it feels like you're the only one in the world listening to it. Because it's just different from anything that was being done at that time. Or it takes you to another place. So if I want to escape, I put on John Wesley Harding. I think about times gone by or something like that. But you can also get excited listening to something like Highway 61, or if you're feeling sentimental, you put on Blood on the Tracks, or it runs the gamut for me.
Oh yeah, same here.
Yeah.
There are certain emotional responses that I get with other music that I don't get with Dylan. Some transcendent beauty of the music just takes me away. Whereas Dylan, it's again, it's more of a literary thing. It's more of like David said, more of like an attitude. He's got this thread several threads of topic matter that go through his albums that just keep popping up, and I find that very rewarding. There's a lot of biblical references. I'm a big fan of the Bible, so there's a lot of that I really enjoy. So, and some of it can be very emotional, but it's not the same as the emotions that I would get by listening to Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells or something, something gorgeous like that. It's a different thing. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. Go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
Matt, just to piggyback on what Jeff said, with the biblical references, it's interesting because it's like after I became a fan of Dylan, my faith life started to grow a little bit, like sort of alongside. And then you can go back and you can hear songs after you've, gotten into the Bible more, and say, oh, that's what he's referencing there in that lyric, that story from the Old Testament. So it's just a lot of richness there that you can find.
There, you got it.
Yeah.
I mean, can you guys listen to Bob anytime, or does you have to be in a certain mood, and does he shape your moods, or is it an anytime, any day thing?
Anytime. Yeah.
You can always find something. I mean, there's a song for everything. There's an album for, I don't know, most states of life when it comes to Dylan. He just got so much to
I mean, you have some choices here for you. So,
Well, I got that in my car, Jeff.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. Gotta have that ready.
Well, yeah. Right. What is that? Is that 39 studio albums and 40 is imminent? We're going to be talking about that in a minute, but yeah. Is it 39? Am I right on that?
It's 40 some, I think. I don't know. Maybe 39.
Want to go next? You were speaking earlier about, Bob, and you mentioned in concert briefly. I have to assume then that you've both seen Bob in concert, and if you have, give me some of your thoughts. Maybe the first time you saw Bob live, or a subsequent time you saw Bob live. What was that experience like to actually see Bob Dylan in the flesh?
The first time it was like what you just said. Wow, I'm seeing Bob Dylan in the flesh. So that was kind of the big deal. There he is, and but the venue was very bad. It was one of those basketball arena type things with the sound bouncing everywhere, and you could barely hear anything. But there he was, But every time since then, I just enjoy. I'm kind of over that stuff now. So I just go and listen to how he approaches all of his songs. This last time I saw him was I guess a year and a half ago or so, and he was doing all of this. He did a lot of this album here, and which I just love this album, and it was absolutely moving. There are times when he gets behind the piano and he walks up to the stage and he speaks. He holds his hand out and he's talking right at the people. Then there's other times he seems detached and kind of in his own world. But every time I've seen him, it's just been amazing. And I meet people there. I always go alone. And I get there early and I meet all the Dylan nerds. And some of them are a little weird, but I do meet some of these nerds and get talking about things. That's part of the fun too. This really is a community of people who really get into him.
Yeah. Dave, I assume you've seen him, or?
Yeah, I've seen him a few times, and the first time, yeah, it was, pretty much just being excited to see him live. And I remember the Raconteurs opened for him, and it was in Boston. And I went with, I think, my father and my brother. Um, but it was just amazing. I couldn't tell you what the set list was or what he closed with, because I was just like, on cloud
Mhm.
nine being able to see him. But then I saw him in some more intimate settings where got to sit a little closer. And um, I always remember he had his guitar player tell a corny joke like right before the closer, and and it was such a bad joke. But then he would thank his guitar player, and that was the only thing he said to the audience the whole show. Uh, there's just little interesting things that he does. The last time I saw him, and I'd like to see him again, but it's been a few years back. It was in a nice open air setting, and I saw him with my dad and my brother again, and that was really nice because Mavis Staples opened for him as well, so get to see
Goodness.
two legends on the same stage. Yeah, always fun to go see Bob.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'll go see him if I'm within a 2-hour drive. I'll always go see him,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Um, all right, let me go. I'm not really a newbie per se. I've seen Dylan live myself a couple of times, and I own maybe 12 of his albums out of the 39 or 40.
Yeah.
But where should, let me get your expert opinions here, two generations of Dylan fans. If a newbie wants to get into Bob Dylan, where do you recommend they start?
I usually recommend something like this because this has the two sides, the more folky side and then the more upbeat side.
Mhm.
That's usually what I would recommend to someone if I didn't know anything about the person. I'd say, well, check that one out because you've got some of the masterpiece tracks: Tambourine Man, Gates of Eden, It's All Right, Ma. You know,
Mhm.
now if I think that the person is more interested in acoustic, more modern, a little bit more modern, maybe I would recommend, Blood on the Tracks or something like that. It kind of all depends on the person, really. But
Right.
yeah,
Jeff, before I move on to Dave with that question, are you a fan of Dylan compilations where they take a bunch of his stuff and put it into like like I got a couple of greatest hits back here. Do you like when they mash
I've
different
never
eras together?
I've never owned a Dylan compilation other than the bootleg series. I do love those,
Mm-hmm.
but I've never had like the essential Dylan or the greatest hits or anything like that.
Right,
Just I never thought I needed them if I had the albums, but
right, right. Dave, yourself, what do you think? Being a younger guy, what should a new person start with?
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of what Jeff said, I would echo. It really depends on the person you're talking to.
Mm,
Bringing it all back home is kind of a perfect mix of things. Yeah, took the words right out of my mouth there. You got the folk
Mhm.
side, you got the upbeat rock stuff like Subterranean, Homesick Blues.
Oh yeah.
Uh, so for people who have eclectic tastes, that's, or just looking for a way in, that's a good album. Um, I was gonna say, like, if you're into like real like classic rock, I'd recommend something like Bringing It All Back Home or Highway 61
Hmm.
as a door in. And then for the acoustic folky side, I might recommend Blood on the Tracks like Jeff, or Freewheelin'. I really like Freewheelin' as like just an introduction to his songwriting, but there's also a few classics on there that I think like Don't Think Twice, It's All Right was featured in a prominent like Mad Men episode. So I'm sure some young people will be like, oh yeah, that song.
Yeah, there's a lot of young people on YouTube covering that song, and they seem
Mhm.
to really love that song. And it is very good.
Yeah. And yeah, so I guess that's what I'd say. If you're a real hardcore like blues and you're into like the Great American Songbook, I might throw out Love and Theft.
mm,
Oh yeah,
Love that album. Go back to
yeah,
that time.
mm.
great choice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great answers, guys. I'm really enjoying these answers. I'm learning a lot here myself. Now I know this is going to be difficult, so I won't make it too specific. Do you have a particular Bob album that's your personal absolute favorite? And if you can't do that, just name it. What are some of your favorite Dylan albums from different eras, personal to you?
That's my favorite right there.
Ah, I happen to have it behind me.
Yeah,
Very
right.
cool.
And yeah, it seems like a cliche, but I like it because the whole album from start to finish is just so consistently engaging. I mean, I could pick 3 or 4 others: Blonde on Blonde, Blood on the Tracks, Love and Theft, but Highway 61 is my favorite.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. Dave?
Yeah, for a single favorite, you know, I would have Highway. I'm on Cape Cod, so that's why there's a whale behind me at the moment. But I would have Highway 61 sitting on top of my bookcase.
Right.
So that, that's definitely one of my favorites. In terms of like a personal favorite, for some reason, I love New Morning from 1970. I just listen to that album all the time, and I don't even think it's Bob's like greatest album, but yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Love New Morning, and it might be like the time, like I'm in a time where I got a young family, and I think Bob was sort of in that space in his life. So I wonder if that's why it's my favorite right now, because the songwriting reflects a lot of that, I think.
Build me a house in Utah.
Yeah. Yeah, sign on the window. That's an underrated song.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I know it's difficult. I know as a Beatle fanatic and a lover of many other artists, that's hard to do, to pick favorites and just pigeonhole you like that. I appreciate that. Hey, before I jump to another thing here, I just want to ask you, what are both of your thoughts on his, I know he's got another one coming out very soon I'm going to ask you about, but his most recent one that's out there right now is Rough and Rowdy Ways from 2020. Any quick thoughts on that one, guys? I know Jeff alluded to it a little bit earlier. What are your thoughts on that one?
What do you think, David?
Yeah, I loved Rough and Rowdy Ways. Yeah, I listened to it probably 3 or 4 times right in a row when it came out, and it's got this different quality, almost like soundscape poetry, yeah, to a lot of songs. It goes deep in history. I love the introspection on something like "I Contain Multitudes." I felt that summed up, Bob really well, over the course of his career. Murder Most Foul is this epic tour of the 20th century, really, and maybe beyond that. I mean, I really loved it. I go back to it every now and again, but it really is an experience. I feel like I need a couple hours to just with nothing else to do to really get into that album. Yeah.
When they on the recent tour that I saw, where he played 9 of those songs, the songs are very, very slow. And the people in the audience who were not familiar with that album, I could easily feel the they were fidgeting. They didn't know what to make of it, because the musicians are almost so laid back, and he's speaking in the lyric. And when I first heard the album, I didn't like it. I said, "What is this?" But it took me about a week or 2 of listening to it to realize, oh, I believe this is telling a story. I made a video on this review of this album, where it seems like he's telling a story of his entire career, his entire life, from the first song all the way until that last song, Key West, And once I started hearing all that in there, I thought, wow, this is a masterpiece. It's absolutely brilliant. And I even said to myself, I hope this is his final album of new material, because it just perfectly closes a great career in such a wonderful way, lyrically. And I think that was maybe why the music was so laid back, because he's just focusing on what he's saying. I don't know. That's my opinion. And it's a beautiful album, no doubt about it. But I don't listen to it very often, because I want to make sure if I do, I got to hear all of it. You want to sit down and give it some time.
I love the fact that at first you weren't too sure about it, and then it became such a beautiful recording for you. That's awesome. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm a Dylan fan, but I don't mind saying if I don't like something once in a while. And at first, I didn't like this.
Real quick, I didn't even have this question prepared for you guys, but I'm just curious, just to go, not to be negative or anything, but do you have a least favorite Bob Dylan album? Is there an album that you just go, yeah, it's okay, it's a C+ or whatever, not terrible, but I don't put it on that often? Knocked Out Loaded.
Right. I do enjoy it.
Any reason or?
Well, it's like there's some outtakes. Well, look at the album. There's the front cover, right? There's the back cover.
Yeah.
It just there are some good songs on there, but a lot of it's pretty bad. It's just bad 80s production. I don't know. There's a long song in there that he co-wrote with Sam Shepard. Some people love. I don't particularly care for. Yeah, but there's a web page out there some guy put up where he's trying to convince people that this is the finest album ever made. So some people really love the album. How about you, David?
Yeah, I'd probably say Knocked Out Loaded's up there for me. I really had a hard time getting into any 80s Dylan for a long time.
Yeah.
I never liked the production. It's only in the past couple of years I've really been able to appreciate something like Infidels, which I think is a great album now. But I just had this bias against it. But yeah, I'd say Empire Burlesque. I'm not a fan of that album. So I'd say that's probably the bottom of the list. I've only listened to that once, I'll admit.
Yeah. Yeah. Those albums sound very dated, don't they? Yeah.
Well, I mean, Bob just turned 82. Here's a man. He's won. I looked up some things here and there that he's won 10 Grammys. I think he has an Academy Award. He's got at least one Golden Globe. 2017, he gets the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I think 2016, I think he got the Nobel Prize for Literature. I mean, what a decorated person here. Looking back on it, guys, he's 82. I mean, is he going to tour till he drops? Is it going to be? I know we got a release coming up I'm going to ask you about in a minute, but what do you expect from Bob going forward at this point? What's your expectations?
What I would like versus what I expect. I expect him to keep going. I don't think he's going to stop until his health makes him stop. I don't think he will. I think it's just in his blood. There's old tapes of him performing for his friends when he was very young. So he's been doing this forever, and I would like him to write more. I think this is fantastic. This book he wrote. I would like that, but I've always said that I would pay money to see him if they rolled him out in a wheelchair on the stage and he just spoke to us. I just think he's a fascinating person.
Dave?
Yeah, I feel the same. He's probably just going to tour until he can't physically do it anymore. And in terms of what I'd like to see, similar to what Jeff said, I want Chronicles Volume 2. I want Volume 2 of that book.
Oh, yeah.
But I wonder if he put it as Volume 1 as a tease for everybody to be waiting for it. Because there's so much that, I don't know, in that book, you read it, it feels like, well, he has said a lot, and maybe that's all he wanted to say.
Just like this is Volume 1, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sure, Bob.
Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt there if he does come out with a Volume 2 the way he's going.
I think he likes joking. I think he likes fooling with us. If I ever interviewed him, the first question I would ask is, "You've been fooling with us, haven't you, Bob?" Yeah, I think he is. I think he does.
Yeah. Hey, as speaking, coming into the present here, June 2nd's a big date. It sounds like there's a release coming out. I'm hearing it's a soundtrack of sorts. Maybe you guys know more about it, called Shadow Kingdom. Are you excited about this upcoming new release from Bob? And have any thoughts about it?
What do you think, David?
Well, I gotta confess, I don't know too many of the details on Shadow Kingdom. I always kind of wait and see, but from what I understand, and Jeff, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it was a live performance that was filmed, and then the audio from that performance is going to be released. Or do I have that right?
You're close. I made a video the day after this was aired, and I lost a lot of subscribers because I was pretty brutal about it. It's not live. It was advertised as a live, intimate event, and it wasn't. It was all pre-filmed.
Okay.
Like sort of a David Lynch film noir kind of thing with a lot of shadows. You could barely see his face, and and the musicians in the back were pretending to play, but they really weren't. You could tell by their hands they weren't really playing; they were pretending. And so it was all like watching a music video, and we paid like 20-30 bucks for it, which is fine. I had no problem. Now the music was fantastic, the performances were fantastic, but it was not live at all. And it is older material, but it is. I'm looking forward to hearing it because it was very good. But no, it wasn't live.
Mhm. Are you guys still, are you going to still support it? You're going to be getting this
Oh yeah,
release?
yeah, sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll listen to it. I haven't seen the film, but yeah, I will admit I'm not a total completionist when it comes to any artist. Just I'll wait and see until it feels like it's something I should get. But yeah,
Mhm.
with any music when it comes to Dylan that gets released, I'll definitely jump on that.
Mhm.
Yeah, like I say, it sounded fantastic. It
Mhm.
was just marvelous. So
Oh, great guys. Thank you. Just great to hear your thoughts on that newest thing coming. Just want to do before we leave today, I don't want to keep you guys, I appreciate generous with your time, but I want to do a real quick hit kind of game with you that I came up with. It's called I just made it up, my Bob Dylan lightning round, okay, so to speak, as we close out today. I've got like 7 or 8 different contests here where I'm going to throw a couple albums at you, this album versus this album. You got to leave one you got to leave one somewhere. You got to, I won't say put it in the trash, but you got to leave it behind, and you
Mhm.
can take the other one with you. All right. So don't stress over it too much, but just basically which one would you pick, and maybe a sentence or two as to your decision-making process. Okay.
Okay.
So doesn't matter who goes first, whoever comes up with an answer. So here we go. Lightning round, Bob Dylan. You got your first 2 choices are the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan from 63 versus Another Side of Bob Dylan in 64. Leave one, keep the other.
I'm going to go against the grain and say I prefer Another Side. And I believe Another Side is the beginning of a very fascinating trilogy of albums. A lot of people say his trilogy is Bringing It All Back Home, Highway 61, and Blonde on Blonde. But Blonde on Blonde was a very unique, one of a kind personal album. Another Side, Bringing It All Back Home, and Highway 61 make a great trilogy where he's talking about freedom, independence, breaking away from coercions of society, and this kind of thing. Chimes of Freedom, and so I love those 3 albums, and I love Freewheeling as well, but I would have to choose Another Side.
Okay.
I'm gonna take Freewheeling because I love A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's really the song that got me into Bob Dylan. Where have you been, my blue-eyed son? Once I heard that, I'm like, oh, he's talking to me. But yeah. So I mean, yeah, I'll take that for that song. But I love
Yeah.
Another Side as well.
Yeah.
Nice. Again, I'm no Bob Dylan expert, so I'm got some matches here. You might like look at me with a funny look on your face, like, why did he put those 2 together? But I'm just doing the best I can here. But this, I think I know Jeff's answer, I'm guessing, but Highway 61 Revisited from 65 versus Blonde on Blonde 66.
Yeah. Highway 61.
I figured that one for you, Jeff.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll take Highway 61, but it's close.
Yeah.
I do love Blonde on Blonde. Yeah, it could be a little more. I don't know. There, Highway 61 is just perfect. Like there's no extra. Blonde on Blonde, it feels like it could have been pared down a little bit, but definitely Highway.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
Blonde on Blonde has a personal, like the Sad Eyed Lady is a gorgeous song, but I feel like it's a personal letter written to his wife, Sarah. And a lot of that was about romance. A lot of the albums about romantic yearning and longing and regrets and this kind of. Whereas Highway 61, it goes a little deeper into the existential landscape of humanity, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it. It just really has a lot of deep thought in there, and I love it.
Yeah, I take Desolation Row over Sad Eyed Lady. It
Yeah,
just feels like it hits more emotion.
definitely. Yeah.
All right. Nashville Skyline from 1969 versus Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid from 73.
Well, that's a tough one. I have to go with Nashville Skyline because of the fact that it was my first. and with my dad. And, you know,
Right.
I'll always think of my dad when I hear that album. But Pat Garrett, man, that's a fantastic album too. Nashville for me.
I'm gonna take Nashville too because I love the
Yeah.
songwriting. Pat Garrett's got a lot of cool instrumentals and stuff like that, and it's got "Knocking on Heaven's Door," which is an absolute
Yeah.
all timer. But Nashville Skyline tonight, I'll be staying here with you, and Lay Lady Lay, and beautiful
Real-
love songs on that album.
Oh yeah.
Nice. All right, let's move a little further in time here. Planet Waves from 1974 versus, this might be an easy one, Blood on the Tracks from 75.
Yeah, that's
I think I know your answer, Jeff.
oh yeah.
Dave, are you there too? Or
I love Blood on the Tracks. Yeah, definitely got to go with that.
Yeah,
I do like the band on Planet Waves.
Mhm.
It's nice to hear them, but yeah, Blood on the Tracks is fantastic.
all right, I have my first of two triple shots here. This is what they consider his Christian trilogy. You got Slow Train Coming, 79, Saved, 1980, or Shot of Love, 81. Which two are you leaving behind, and what's your favorite of that trilogy of Christian albums?
Saved. No doubt about it. Saved is very see in Slow Train is an evangelical. You got to serve somebody. What are you going to do? What's your response? That kind of thing. Saved is a very thankful album. He's thanking God for all the things that's been given to him. And what can I do for you? He says, that kind of thing. So yeah, Saved is and that's another one that a lot of people will disagree on.
Mhm. Dave?
I'm gonna go with Slow Train because I love the risk he took by going that direction. And,
Oh, yeah.
and the music's great. I love the sound of a lot of it. I didn't always, but I've really come to appreciate it.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
Slow
As
Train.
that Dire Straits feel. Mark
Yeah.
Knopfler.
Ah,
Mhm.
yeah, good point. Okay, Infidels of 1983 versus Empire Burlesque of 1985, mid 80s.
Now,
I
you
think
probably
I
already know the
clear.
answer.
That's an easy one too, right?
Yeah.
Infidels.
Yeah.
All right, let's move up a little bit. These two are spread out by a couple of years, but you got Time Out of Mind in 1997 versus Modern Times in 2006.
Time Out of Mind.
Hmm.
I'll probably go with Time Out of Mind, but I love Modern Times because that was the year I really started getting into Dylan, and that's when that album was released. So
Yeah.
I was excited about it. I listened to it a lot, but I think Time Out of Mind is better. It's a little deeper.
And my last one, it's my final triplicate too here. We got his covers albums, I guess I'll call them. We got Shadows in the Night 2015, Fallen Angels 2016, and Triplicate 2017.
I don't have either one of them. No, thank you. I played in jazz groups, you know, a one and a two, a boom, dink, a boom, bonk, a boom, bonk. So I know all those songs. I played with the vocalists and all, and I got all that out of my system. And if I ever want to hear those songs done, I'm going to listen to Tony Bennett, Frank Sinatra, you know, those classic people. No
favorite out of those three. Dave, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the reason I like those albums is just because Bob's paying tribute to Frank Sinatra and, you know, some of those old songs. I guess I'll go with Shadows. That's probably the most enjoyable listen for me of the three of them. Yeah.
Well, if I ever buy one, I'll buy that one first. Okay.
So, all right, guys, real quick, final thoughts. You'd like to say to someone who's out there watching, thinking about becoming a Bob Dylan fan or getting into Bob? What thought or two about you'd like to leave us with about Bob Dylan?
Well, I did a video, 12 reasons I'm a Bob Dylan fan. And if you could go to that video, I think that would explain all the reasons I think that he should be given a chance, is for sure. And
I'm definitely going to put the link to your channel with this. So absolutely,
okay,
people should do that. Yeah,
I think that would be the best way I could answer that question, because there's so many things I could talk about.
Right. Dave, anything highlights for you that leave us with about Bob?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Bob Bob Dylan's music has always been very personal to me in a lot of ways. I think there are songs that Bob Dylan has a song for everybody. I think you can find yourself somewhere, like you felt this way, you've thought this, or you've done this. It's in one of his songs, but also just the scope of his mind and his appreciation of literature and history. It makes you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself too when you listen to it.
Great answer.
And that's about all I could say to sum it up. It's very personal, but it's also very meaningful in a broad sense.
Oh,
Great
fantastic,
answer,
guys.
Dave.
I
Yeah.
thank you both so much for doing this and taking time away from your lives and families like this. It's to participate in this. It's really opened my eyes more to the magic. I can see it in your faces as I talk to you, the magic of Bob Dylan and what he means to you and the importance of his music and his words and his tales and what he talks about. So I thank you both again for being here. If we don't have anything else, I just want to say all the best to the two of you. Take care. And I hope we can have some other topic that comes up in the future where we can all get together again and chat like this. Because for me, this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. So Jeff over at the Calico Silver channel, I'll be putting the link, as I said, to your channel. And Dave, I appreciate your participation and hoping we can get together again and do this some more.
You got it. Yeah.
Thank you guys
Nice
so
meeting
much.
you, Dave.
Nice
Nice
seeing
meeting
you.
you too, Jeff. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
great talking with you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Matt.
Thanks, fellas.
Thanks, Matt.